Hello, and welcome to AircraftGrade, the podcast all about commercial aviation. I'm your host Alex, and coming up this week. On a record-breaking day, what is the future of supersonic travel? Etihad becomes the first airline to fully vaccinate all cabin crew and pilots, how airports have benefited from the pandemic, plus the latest aircraft orders and deliveries. Before we take a deep dive into our main topics, let's first round up the key aviation stories from the last week, giving you my opinion along the way. Air Canada has reported a $3.8 billion loss from 2020, which it described as its bleakest year. Unsurprisingly, their revenue dropped by 70% from 2019. Although this definitely isn't ideal, the airline are looking ahead to a better year with large expansion in the form of a takeover of Air Transat. Airbus has announced intentions to turn airports in Paris into hydrogen hubs. Personally, I think this is excellent news as we start to see some concrete steps being taken into producing a sustainable future for aviation. British Airways has sent a brand new 787-10 Dreamliner to storage in Victorville. Although this isn't ideal, it makes perfect sense for a flag carrier, in my opinion. Instead of hemorrhaging costs operating a jet that won't be filled on its routes, why not send it to storage for a few years until demand picks up back up? Surely, it's a no-brainer. Following the updated travel guidelines outlined by the UK government this week with a similar quarantine system to Australia, travellers are left shocked at the threat of up to 10 years imprisonment if they're caught breaking the rules. Harsh, but I think fair. On the 7th of February 1996, British Airways achieved the fastest ever transatlantic crossing from New York to London. The plane that achieved this feat? Well, of course, it was the Concorde, the most successful supersonic aircraft. As we mark 25 years since the event, today we look at the Concorde, its demise, and the future of supersonic travel. The Concorde was jointly developed in the 1960s by Aerospatiale, then Sud Aviation, now Airbus, and the British Aircraft Corporation, now BAE, and first flew in 1969. The project was part of a supersonic race to develop a passenger aircraft that could fly above the speed of sound. Manufacturers like Boeing, Lockheed and Tupolev started producing aircraft. Boeing produced the 2707, the US's answer to the Concorde. It boasted higher capacity, speed and range than the Concorde and received more orders. However, in 1971, the project was cancelled after changes in the economy and the cost to build and produce the aircraft. The only successful rival to the Concorde was the Russian Tupolev Tu-144, which should carry an extra 40 passengers and fly faster. Its first flight was also 2 months before the Concorde, but unlike the Anglo-French aircraft, it had a much shorter lifespan. It famously crashed at the 1973 Paris Air Show, and later again in the decade. It was then subsequently grounded permanently. Concorde originally had 74 orders from 16 airlines, including Pan Am, American Airlines and Qantas. However, the oil crisis of 1973 and stock market crash of 1973-74 have made many airlines more conscious of the plane's fuel burn. With it achieving barely half of the passenger miles per gallon of the Boeing 707 at 15.8 and 33.3 respectively, and the new 747 was over 3 times more efficient than the Concorde, with a passenger miles per gallon of fuel number of 46.4. Also, with market trends leaning towards cheaper airline tickets, airlines started to question Concorde's market stability. In the end, only British Airways and Air France took the Concorde, both receiving 7 each. Commencing operations in 1976, the airlines were only able to make the aircraft profitable after the French and British governments covered the costly development costs. The Concorde was a luxury experience for everyone that flew on it, but it was a nightmare for airlines to operate. When an aircraft breaches the speed of sound, a loud sonic boom can be heard from the ground. When Concorde did this, it disturbed neighbours and residents, leading to the plane being banned from flying above the speed of sound over land, so it could only realistically operate over the ocean. The plane wasn't very efficient and due to its high cruise level had massive negative effects to the ozone layer. The aircraft also had slim profit margins, and British Airways and Air France had to both keep a spare Concorde in JFK just in case the outbound flight faced an issue and couldn't return straight away. And if passengers had paid for a Concorde ticket, they would not accept a subsonic flight home. I know, I couldn't believe it either. There was also a fatal crash on the 25th of July 2000 after Air France flight 4590 burst a tyre piercing the fuel tanks, setting the plane on fire, after the Concorde ran over a bit of debris from a hastily repaired DC-10. This definitely added to its demise, along with of course the tragedy of 9/11. Airbus, who had taken over Aerospatiale in 2000, also said they weren't willing to supply new parts to the Concordes due to there only being 14 jets, not allowing them to benefit from economies of scale. The planes were also ridiculously outdated, featuring an analogue cockpit as there was no need for either operator to upgrade the plane as there was no competing aircraft. By the time the jet was retired in 2003, it was the last aircraft in BA's fleet to still require a flight engineer. Although these are the official reasons the jet was retired, some analysts believe that BA and Air France could make more money from first-class passengers by flying them subsonically. Despite this, passengers loved the aircraft up until its last flight, and the fact that it could cross the Atlantic in about half the time of a subsonic jet, around 3.5 hours, was a game changer. However, British Airways wanted more when they decided to try and break the record of the fastest transatlantic crossing, and Sunday marked the 25th anniversary of this feat. The flight crew had planned this record attempt well in advance, and every detail was analysed and acted upon. They chose to fly in February as the month offered the most desirable temperature and wind velocity. The crew also took advantage of the jet streams by flying east. This would increase their top speed. The pilots also rendezvoused with ATC in London and New York to make sure they wouldn't be delayed in takeoff or landing. The passengers and cabin crew had no idea this attempt would be happening in order to minimise disappointment if it failed. The flight wasn't plain sailing. See what I did there? Anyway, they initially faced an approach issue in London, but the pilots managed to convince ATC to give them their chosen approach. All in all, the flight took 2 hours, 52 minutes and 59 seconds, flying at a speed of 2,100 kilometers an hour. Nowadays, the fastest transatlantic crossing in subsonic aircraft are around 5 hours, with BA also holding that record of 4 hours, 56 minutes. But what about the future of supersonic travel? Well, there's a lot to talk about, so let's get into it. Since the Concorde, aviation has progressed significantly, and airlines and passengers are now even more conscious about their environmental impact and the fuel efficiency of their aircraft, and this is something we will focus on. Currently, there are 4 main supersonic passenger aircraft being developed. The most promising plane so far is called the Overture by Boom Supersonic. It's also the only aircraft being developed for the commercial use. The other models we'll be taking a look at later are designed for the business sector with 20 seats or less. Nonetheless, the Overture has a seating capacity of just over half of that of the Concorde, seating 55 passengers. It has a range of 1,000 kilometres greater than Concorde at 8,340 kilometres. The Overture also flies at a speed of Mach 2.2, also slightly higher than Concorde. The Overture is targeting flight times of around half of that of current jets. This means flights like Tokyo to Seattle would only take around 4.5 hours. As mentioned earlier, one of the Concorde's downfalls was its fuel efficiency. To combat this, Boom are producing the Overture out of carbon composites, titanium and aluminium. The jet's efficiency would allow airlines to charge customers regular business class fares to fly on the Overture. The Overture is compatible with all sustainable fuels and will be powered by either GE J85s or possibly Rolls-Royce engines. The company have already released a prototype called the XB1, which is a 1/3 scale of the final aircraft. Boom have 76 orders from 5 airlines as of now. Unlike the Boom Overture, the next aircraft are all targeted at the business sector of aviation. The Ariane Supersonic AS2 will seat just 8 to 12 people and only cruise at a speed of Mach 1.4, achieving London to New York in around 4 hours. The AS2 though is heavily focused on being environmentally friendly, and the company has designed the plane to run on 100% sustainable aviation fuels and operate as carbon neutral. The AS2 has a Mach 1.4 range of around 8,800 kilometres, and Ariane completed wind tunnel testing in November last year and is aiming for release date of 2027, with construction beginning in 2022 and 2023. A rival to the Ariane Supersonic AS2 is the Spike Aerospace S512, and it's a plane I'm not really a fan of. Although boasting similar specs to the AS2, seating 12 to 18 passengers and a cruising speed of Mach 1.6, and despite an impressive range of 11,500 kilometres, I'm not a fan because it is designed to be completely windowless. Although this will lead to decreased structural costs and make the plane more aerodynamic and less complex, I can't help thinking it will make passengers feel very claustrophobic, despite large projections of the outside being put into the cabin. Flight Global say Spike aimed to have a 2/3 scale demonstrator by 2021 and deliveries to start in 2025. The last significant supersonic jet concept in development is by Virgin Galactic. The space exploration company only announced plans for a jet in August 2020, but wow, are they ambitious. They aim to produce a Mach 3 aircraft in conjunction with Rolls-Royce, once again focused at the corporate jet market, seating around 19 passengers. The Mach 3 cruise speed is well above its competition and could make it very successful, although this aircraft is still very much in the development, design and proposal phase with no timescale for release, as yet, released. And to round off then, as mentioned, one of Concorde's limiting factors and one of the main reasons it failed was because of its loud sonic boom. Well, Lockheed Martin and NASA are trying to solve this. The X-59 Quest, developed by the aerospace companies, is a supersonic jet focused on overcoming the challenge of noise created by the sonic boom, something that will be crucial for supersonic jets to fly over the US mainland. The X-59 is purely an experimental aircraft and isn't planned to be brought to the market as a commercial or corporate jet. These plans sound great, but it won't be easy for these supersonic planes to come into fruition. Fuel burn and efficiency is still a major factor for supersonic flight, with conventional turbojet engines being widely inefficient. Noise is also a big factor, with rules still governing supersonic flight in the US. However, Concorde's 105 decibel sonic boom is looking to be reduced to 75 in Spike's S512 and Lockheed Martin's X-59. The Ariane Supersonic AS2 is also supposed to run on biofuels, but as discussed last week, these aren't the answer in my opinion, as CO2 is still emitted into the atmosphere. So should we really be focusing our research on supersonic travel? I think the industry's time is better spent researching and implementing new sustainable fuels, and as an industry, we need to do better. Despite this, I'm still really excited for supersonic travel, and I think it'll be really interesting to see modern day technologies like fly-by-wire, glass cockpits and modern cabin products on a jet that can get you anywhere in the world in half the time of an A350 or 787. It's just crazy to think. On Wednesday, Abu Dhabi-based airline Etihad revealed it had vaccinated all of its operational cabin crew and pilots from COVID-19. The vaccine is widely being accepted as the answer to boost the industry's recovery. Etihad worked with the health authorities in the UAE to secure its frontline staff access to the vaccine. The airline's medical centre was quickly turned into a vaccination centre, with it commencing operations in December 2020. Etihad has beat all government targets, and the airline revealed that a total of 75% of its workforce have already received the first vaccine dose. The United Arab Emirates government aims to have half their population vaccinated by the end of March, with Etihad helping them along their way. Although the airline maintains that the vaccination programme is still optional for all employees. The Vice President of Flight Operations said, "Making sure that our frontline crew have easy access to the COVID-19 vaccine has played a critical role in ensuring their safety and well-being. Providing our workforce with this additional level of protection will also help safeguard our operation, allowing us to perform optimally despite the current challenges." Other airlines have had different approaches to protecting their staff. United Airlines have reaffirmed that they want vaccines to be mandatory, and Delta have begun giving vaccinations to older staff, and, like Etihad, are making them optional. Although Etihad has vaccinated 100% of its operational workforce, Singapore Airlines wants to become the first airline to vaccinate 100% of its total workforce. Over 90% of their staff have already signed up to be vaccinated. Personally, I think the vaccine is an excellent way of moving the industry forward, and when it becomes available to me, I'll definitely be taking it. But it's definitely important for airlines and passengers to know that just because they have the vaccine doesn't mean they're going to stop the spread of the virus. In my mind, every single member of airline staff would have to be vaccinated before the industry can open up again. And AAPA, the Association of Asia Pacific Airlines, agrees with me. Subhas Menon, Director General of the AAPA, said his organisation don't think the vaccination should be necessary for international travel because he said everyone is pinning their hopes on the vaccine and mass immunisation. Although he maintains he's not an anti-vaxxer, he says it's not about whether we should jab or not, It's not about who to jab, when to jab or what to jab, rather the answer is more important. No one is safe until everybody is safe. So in essence, what I just said, just because some passengers and staff have the vaccine doesn't mean the virus won't spread. According to The Economist, the data which AAPA drew their conclusions from, it will take several years for mass vaccination, meaning if the industry is relying on mass vaccination to open back up, it's got a long wait. A long wait the airlines cannot afford. Some Asia-Pacific countries aren't even expected to reach a 60% vaccination rate. Countries like Pakistan will take until 2024, with Afghanistan, Cambodia, Fiji, Myanmar and North Korea taking up until 2025. The AAPA covers rich and poor countries, so they think rather, understandably, and fairly in my opinion, it's unfair for citizens of these poorer countries to be excluded from travel because their nation lacks the infrastructure to vaccinate their citizens. The industry is very aware of these issues, with Emirates planning to set up a vaccination hub to get the vaccine to more impoverished and developing nations. Australia is also buying more vaccinations than it needs so it can distribute them to neighbouring, struggling countries. Although, like a lot of things in life, it's seeming that the poor people will suffer and the rich will not, and that's just not right. Personally, I think it's time for the industry to come together, forget individual profits, bury any hatchets they may have with each other, and just come together to help the world get vaccinated. In the end, it's the best for everyone, and the best way for the industry to recover. The truth is, boards on a plane will never be the same again, but it will become a whole lot easier if we all just do our bit for each other. The pandemic has been cruel to both airlines and airports, with dwindling passenger numbers not generating the revenue required to keep airports and airlines running. However, recently some key airports in the UK have become very popular due to their geography. Over the last 10 years, London Heathrow and Gatwick have led Manchester as the UK's busiest airport. However, since COVID hit our small island, the northern hub has become more popular than ever, overtaking Gatwick for the number 2 spot. Britain has a large amount of commercial airports, considering our fairly small size, with approximately 25 major airports across Britain. This equates to an airport every 9,700 square kilometres. London itself has 6 airports. Manchester has remained the third busiest airport in the UK after it overtook Stansted in 2011, and Manchester traffic grew by 3.9% in 2019, just under 4 times the amount of growth of Gatwick and Heathrow. However, Manchester has never been able to overtake Gatwick for the second place crown, with only 30 million passengers and 202,000 aircraft movements in 2019, compared to Gatwick's 46.6 million passengers and 283,000 aircraft movements. Since COVID hit, Gatwick has been struggling, despite in the first quarter Gatwick handling a third more flights per day than Manchester. However, when the UK went into lockdown, it was a completely different story. In the first week of July, Manchester operated double the amount of services than Gatwick. The London airport is almost definitely struggling due to airlines like British Airways, Virgin Atlantic and Norwegian leaving the destination. And now we're in a third lockdown here in the UK, Manchester has maintained its position as the UK's second busiest airport. Despite Gatwick becoming a low-cost hub for Europe, I think it will continue to struggle. Why? Well, it's quite simple in my opinion. Gatwick is only 40 miles away from Heathrow, so it's constantly fighting for demand from its larger neighbour. And given a choice, airlines will choose Heathrow, due to its better facilities, proximity to the city, and the fact that it's just so well known. Whereas Manchester is becoming, in my opinion, the Heathrow of the North. A powerful hub with competitive services like Emirates A380s and Aer Lingus' transatlantic services. It's perfectly situated to be a northern alternative to Heathrow, and the two are still relatively easy to connect between, on short regional hops. It will be super exciting to see just how formidable Manchester can become, and in my opinion, I think it's unlikely it will drop below Gatwick again, even after COVID. The London airport duopoly may finally be over. Only time will tell. Now it's time to cover the most important airplane orders and deliveries over the last week. Singapore Airlines advances the 777X program by swapping 14 Boeing 787 jets for 11 777Xs. This means their number of 777X orders increases to 31. This means then that Singapore Airlines is still waiting on 35 A320 series aircraft, 15 A350-900s, 31 737 MAX 8s inherited from Silk Air, 28 787s and 31 777-9s. British Airways has received its third Boeing 787-10, but as discussed earlier, has sent it straight to long-term storage in Victorville. Russian regional carrier Avia has taken delivery of two ATR 72-500s, the first ATRs to ever be registered in Russia. United, WestJet and Southwest have received 737 MAXs, with the former receiving two MAX 9s and the latter two receiving a single MAX 8 each. CMA, GCM Air Cargo have acquired four A330-200 freighters from Qatar Airways, with Air Belgium being the primary operator. The first example, Oscar Charlie Mike Alpha, was delivered on Thursday. That's all we've got time for today. Thank you for listening to the AircraftGrade podcast. If you did enjoy it, please leave a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or your favourite podcast player. If you do have any feedback, you can tweet us at AircraftGrade or DM us on Instagram. aircraftgrade.co.uk, our website is now live, so make sure to check that out. I've been Alex, have a decently average week. Goodbye.